and welcome to Easy Piecy Quilts. My name is Juliah Tiedemann, and today we are going to be doing a patriotic quilt called 4th of July Night Sky. I thought that this pattern looked like bursts of fireworks and color against a dark summer night sky. It is meant to celebrate freedom, and it's one of my favorite color combinations, which is red, white, and blue on a quilt. I love that color combination. It's beautiful, it's colorful, and so I can't wait to share this quilt with you and how to make it. It is a skilled beginner level pattern. It comes in 3 sizes. So the throw or twin, it's a pretty big throw, but 72 inches by 86 inches. The queen is 86 by 100 and the king is 100 by 114. So larger size quilt, but the blocks come together relatively quickly, and I will show you how to do that. It's easy to chain piece this quilt. There's lots of components that lend themselves to that. We're also going to strip piece, which makes it easier to, sew the strips together and then subcut them. So that'll make this quilt go together a lot more quickly. And it's a fun quilt to do. So I can't wait to show you that. But I also can't wait to show you our other patriotic projects that are coming up. So if you are not a subscriber to this channel, I think that you might want to hit that button, because we are going to be doing a lot of fun projects for the next month, getting ready for summer. So we have this pillow that we're going to be designing and making, which I've already put on my porch. I absolutely love it. It's a nice size pillow, and it's very festive for summer. So, and then we also, in a similar vein, are going to be doing a quilt pattern called Farmhouse Flags. And this will be coming up in the next few weeks too. So this quilt is also red, white, and blue, and we're going to have kits for both this quilt and 4th of July Night Sky. And I'm going to go ahead and release this pattern with that pattern and the pillow pattern together, because I want to give you guys the opportunity to buy them as a bundle and save some money. So look for these 2 patterns as a bundle on the website, and I will also put that in the link on the description box below, so that if you want both or all the patterns, then you can have a little savings there. So I can't wait to get started, and I hope you have some fun making 4th of July Night Sky with me. Technically, there are 2 blocks in this quilt, but they are very, very similar. And they're easy to make because we are going to use strips, strip piecing for this block. So the first step is to take your piece E, and we are going to cut corner to corner on this piece. And depending on how comfortable you are, you can do several of these cuts at a time. I usually will stack 4 or 5 at a time. And then when you're done with that, you have, whoop, my blade needs changed. So you'll have 4 triangles out of your square. And then you will take 2 D pieces. These are one on top of the other. So there's 2 squares here. And your D pieces, you're going to cut from corner to corner once. And that is all the cutting you're going to do on your D pieces. Now these aren't super similar in size, but I usually try and keep them separated so they don't get mixed up. And then you have a piece C that goes in the center of the block. And then we are going to get our strip pieces here. And we're going to cut some strips to make a portion of this block. I usually, when I'm cutting strip pieces, I just like to line the top up with a line on my cutting mat. And you'll need 4 pieces cut off of your strip set in order to make one block. And these, as with any strip set, you have got to get your seam allowances correct, because if your seam allowances are not correct, your strip sets will not measure correctly. So I usually like to make one strip set, make sure that it measures correctly, and then go ahead and make the other strip sets, because it's a sad day when you don't have your seam allowance correct and then your strip sets are all done and you don't have them the right size. And I do that also with my blocks. I always, if I'm starting a new quilt, I make one block. That way, if I'm cutting something incorrectly or I'm piecing something incorrectly, I know before I cut out the entire quilt or piece the entire quilt. Because I've had people say, oh, I didn't cut, I cut that at 3 1/4 instead of 3 3/4, and I've cut my whole quilt. And I just want to cry for them. So you can prevent that by making one and then figuring that out. So we're going to lay out this block. And this is how it lays out. Oh, I've got it a little crooked here. Let's straighten things out. It'll be easier for you to see if it's straight. This piece goes in here. Okay, so here's your block. This is one block. And then the other block, the only difference between the two blocks is that one block, the stripes go towards the center. The other block, the stripes are oriented the other direction. So that is the difference between the two blocks in this quilt. So, and I made the blocks different colors. I used different reds for the different orientation of the stripes. So you can make it all the same or do whatever you'd like to do. So the first step with this quilt, let's go ahead and put those back this way, is to, I like to, whenever possible, I like to chain piece. So I kind of look at this block as being put together on point. But my first step with this block is to take the D piece and the strip set and go ahead and piece all of the D pieces to the top of the strip set. And I run every single one of these pieces through the machine. Now be careful, because your other block you're going to do like this. Not your stripes are going the opposite way, but it's the same exact concept. So once you have all of these sewn on there, I will come back and I'll show you the next step of the block. But the easiest way to piece this is to fold this in half and just press that into place, a little crease there, and then finger press a crease in this piece, and then now you have your centers. So when you put this triangle across here, it's going to overlap quite a bit, because we're going to trim these pieces down to the appropriate size when we're done at the end of the when we're done with the block. So go ahead and sew all of your D pieces to your strip sets and center them, and I'll show you the next step when we get back. Here are my little chain pieced parts of the block, and I went ahead and pressed this portion away from the strip set, and I'm just going to trim these guys apart, and we're going to put them back in the block where they came from. Okay, the next part of this block is I kind of like to look at this block in 3 parts. So I cut this block like this. This is a part, this is a part, and this is a part. So we are going to sew these triangles on either side of this piece that we made. So what you're going to do is you're going to line your corner up here. You're going to line it up like that, and you're going to sew along here. And the same thing, once you get that on, you're going to line this corner up and sew 1/4 of an inch on this side. So that's going to open up like this. And I do press this way on those seams. And then with this part of the block, we're going to sew these 2 pieces to get onto either side of this center square with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So that'll kind of go like that. Obviously it's not going to be that small, but, and then we're going to repeat, these 2 are mirror images of each other. So I'm pressing these seams out this way. So I'm going to press these seams in this way, and I'm going to press these seams out this way. So that way, when we get ready to put this to this to this to assemble the block, we're going to be able to nest these seams here and make nice, pretty corners. And it'll make it really easy to put this block together. So I'm going to go ahead and attach these pieces and these together, and then I'll show you how we're going to nest those seams. The block is put together in 3 parts, and you can see everything is pressed toward blue. So this is pressed this way, this is pressed towards the blue, toward the blue, toward the blue. So that makes it easy to remember. Although you may not decide to do blue on your background, but whatever your background color is. And so if you do that, you'll notice that you'll be able to nest your seams when you put this block together. So the seams will go in opposite directions, and that allows you to decrease bulk, but also line up those corners so that they are nice and crisp and pretty. So I'll go ahead and put this block together, and I'll show you how I trim it, and then we can work on the sashing. You'll notice that this block is a little big, and that is by design. I think sometimes it's a little bit hard to exactly match up the edges when you're dealing with triangles. So I like to make this, this block just a little bit bigger so we have some wiggle room so we can cut it down, and that will make it a lot easier. So when you are cutting down a block, you want to make sure that you center the block on your ruler. So this, I just happen to have a ruler that's 12.5 by 12.5 because that's a pretty standard size for some blocks or cutting, that kind of thing. So you don't need to go out and buy a ruler specific for this. You could use an 18.5 by 18.5 ruler and just use the lines, cut one side and then the other, one side, you know, and then do the other 2 sides. But this block, what you're going to want to do, like I said, is you're going to want to make sure that it is centered when you cut it. So because it's 12.5 across by 12.5 up and down, what you want to look for is you want to look for the 6.25 inch line. because 6 1/4 is half of 12 1/2. And so this is the 6 1/4 line, and you want to make sure that it intersects here and here. And that'll give you halfway this way. And then if you look at 6 1/4 here, you want to make sure that it intersects these two areas on the block. And I'm sorry if there's some glare. What I'm looking at is these points here. This point, you're going to want your 6 1/4 inch line to go through here, and you're going to want your 6 1/4 inch line to go through here. So once you have those two lined up, you can be pretty certain that your block is centered, because if you cut off center, then you're going to lose some of your points, and you don't want that when you put your block together. You want nice, pretty points. So we will go ahead and trim this, and there's not a lot of waste, but there's enough that you can make your block the exact size you want it, so that when you piece the quilt top, it makes it a little easier to line things up. And then you're also going to want to flip this on the back, and there's some dog ears back here. There'll be 2 that you can just trim that excess off. And that guy didn't want to trim, but there you go. This is what the trimmed block should look like. That didn't trim very well. Okay, so there we go. That's straight now. So there's our trimmed block. And then the next step is to do the sashing. So the sashing comes together and looks like stars. Let me go grab my sashing here. So you're going to start out with all the sashing pieces with strips. And some of the strips are going to have star points on one end, and some of the strips are going to have star points on both ends. So what you do is you line up the corner of the square with the corner of the sashing piece, and you can draw a line from corner to corner if you want to. This is such a small piece that or if you have a laser on your sewing machine, it makes it really easy. You can do that. I'll grab a pen here and show you which direction that line goes. It goes like this. So you're going to want to sew from corner to corner on the white square. Now once you were sew on the line, not a 1/4 of an inch from the line, on the line. And then once we get done with that, then I will show you where you place the other piece, and we'll put several of these strip sets, not strip sets, the sashing pieces together, and I'll show you how they form the star. This is another great step where you can chain piece. So you can see that I just chain pieced these squares on the sashing, and I went ahead and pressed the corners back, and then all you do, let's separate these here, is you trim off at about a 1/4 of an inch, trim those pieces off, and we won't do all of them here, but you get the idea. Just trim to a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And you'll have to do that. You'll have to go ahead and trim and press before you add your other side. So this is the same exact process. You take this, you can draw. I wouldn't advise using a pen, but I'm using it because it's easy to see. but you're going to go ahead and do from a corner to corner this way. So on the line, we're going to press that back, trim the seam allowance, and then you're going to have two corners of this sashing that are white. So I chain pieced the second side on here. These are all chain pieced together, and I did the same thing. I went from corner to corner. I pressed that. We're going to cut it at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And these are the star points in the sashing. Let me just trim these real quick. You'll notice some of the sashing pieces have the points just on the one side, like around the periphery of the quilt. But there are some, and actually most of them, have the star points on both sides of the sashing, which it just, it's just the same steps, and you repeat it over on the other side, and there's nothing different about that, just either side of the sashing piece. So let's get these cut, and I will show you how this comes together to make the star. So you're going to have your cornerstone pieces in the center here. And then once you add your sashing between your blocks, so your block will be here, your sashing will go here underneath your block, and then another one here. So it's kind of hard to picture that as a star right now, but what will happen is these pieces will come together to make a star, and your blocks will be obviously in these parts of the quilt top. And so when you put the quilt top together, you think about it in strips. So this will be a row, then you'll piece the sashing row, then you'll piece the block and sashing row, and it'll come together that way. So let's look at the quilt top. I don't have this bound yet, but here is the quilt top for this quilt. So you can see, let's put this like that. I'm trying to get it centered so you can see it a little better. So here are our sashing pieces coming together to make the star. And here is our block that we just made with the reds. And this is actually the same fabric. It's just the stitching is making that design on there. And then you can see that these are the other block 2 of the quilt top with the stripes going the opposite direction. So this is block 1, block 2. They're very similar, but when it all comes together, I thought it looked like fireworks on a 4th of July night. So that is how you make this quilt top. Thank you so much for joining me for 4th of July Night Sky. It's always a pleasure to have you here at Easy Piecy Quilts. And if you make this quilt or any other quilt, I'd love to see it. You can email me at easypiecyquilts.com, or you can find me on Facebook and Instagram, and of course on YouTube. Have a great week.